Galloway. He grew up in and out of care. And Chris Wild, who also grew up in care and wrote a bestseller, Shedding Light on Life in the System. Terry, you've been to the House of Lords today. As we said, you've been in a room with MPs talking to them about your experience and the change you want to see. What is the key to change?
Today was the House of Lords was our group, Care Experience, where we brought Care Experience people to lobby the government for a protected characteristic. I'm here because I was at a funeral. Like, I grew up in the care system. By the time I'd left the care system, I'd lived in over 100 places. We were brought into the care system with my siblings, we were split up, we was abused and then spat out of the system. And I was at a funeral with my sister a few years ago, and she'd lost her children by that point. My brother had lost his children to the care system, and she was really thin, she was drawn, she was addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol, and she said to me, she said, "Terry, I don't want to die, I don't want to be next." And when your sister says that to you, what do you say in response? And all I could think of at that time, just like a lot of care campaigners here today, let's use our trauma, let's use what we've been through to change the care system. Now, I didn't have a clue what it was that we would do that would significantly move that needle for children in care. Unfortunately, a few months later, she was dead, and both my siblings are dead from the care system. Care Experience people are 70% more likely to die prematurely than any other group.
Terry, I'm so sorry. I want to go back to what you mentioned at the start there. You want the care experience to be seen as a protected characteristic in law. For people watching at home tonight, explain to us what that means and why it will make such a difference.
The care system needs to, as we've heard tonight, it needs to be systemic. It's bigger than Bridget, it's bigger than any department in government. This goes through every little nook and cranny across the whole of Whitehall, and the only way you can do that is make people accountable and make it so that whenever they're making decisions, whenever they're planning policy, whenever they're designing services, they look to the care experience population and they think, how is this going to impact them? And the only way to do that is to go and hear their voice.
Well, your voices were heard loud and clear in the House of Lords. I understand lots of MPs came out to hear you and many people in this room speak. Chris, in terms of how you bring about that change, ultimately, it's MPs voting for this change. What sense did you get today about how close you are to what you feel is a pivotal moment for the care system?
So I think it's important to myself and Terry, we were both involved in the Independent Care Review, Josh McAllister Review, and when that was published...
Fancy a beer?
Yeah.
From that, the Department for Education didn't want to go ahead with that, and so Terry Galloway started this campaign to make care experience protected characteristic. I came on board with him, and we have been lobbying Parliament for the last 2 years, travelling the country from our own money, up and down, speaking at conferences, meeting with politicians. Before the general election, myself and Terry, we sat down with numerous politicians to show the evidence. You've seen today testimonials from young people, to bring them to the House of Commons, to bring them to the Department for Education and say, look, there's enough evidence here to show you, but we need a change in law and we need it quick. And it's quite important just to say, Nick, as well, that statistically, we don't collate the evidence, we don't collate the data when people leave care and end up committing suicide or dying prematurely. We don't collate that evidence, so you can't find that. We don't know. We only know when a catastrophe happens and it ends up in the media. But let me tell you, I've been campaigning for 15 years alongside Terry Galloway, and I've seen so many young people who have taken their own lives past 18 when they leave the care system, fall off the care cliff. And the only reason I know this is because I'm out there speaking on TV and radio, and people contact me and say, Chris, would you come to this person's funeral? And I've gone to these places and nobody's turned up, not even the social workers. Now, we need a cross-party alliance, support in this. We need everybody to get behind this. Politicians are listening, and this is the change in dynamics, the change in politics is that we've got a lot of young politicians coming into the play now where they've had real jobs. Sally Jameson, she used to be a prison officer. She knows about this. She's seen young people coming into the prison system, leaving care, coming straight in there. Josh McAllister's a minister now. We've got some great politicians, and we've got to keep that foot on the gas.
You feel like the momentum is here. Sam, I just want to bring you in terms of if councils fail to prevent the deaths of children, what do you think the consequences should be? Because we're talking about young lives here in big numbers.
I will answer that question, but I think it's interesting you talked about the prison system. Rachel de Souza is doing the Longford lecture this week, and she's talking about and she's talking about how basically back in the day they were called Skegby or places like that. Institutions, it's a bit before prison, you know, young people, offenders institutions should, young offenders units should be closed down. It's what should happen. So I think it's what are we asking for? You're asking for a small part of the bill. My job with the NSPCC, we're asking for another part of the bill to change. I think that, you know, in 1989, the Children's Act changed, and that was the point in my life that I went from a matrimonial interim care order to a full care order, which meant that my parents no longer had any rights over me. Now, if the taxpayers, sorry to talk about this like we're not human beings, but sometimes you've got to talk that way. You've got to be really crass about it. Economically, if it's costing £1 million a week to keep some young people in care, but the outcome for that young person is that they are either drug addicted, you know, on the streets because of their trauma that may or may not have been caused by the state. You've got to remember that some young people enter the care system already massively traumatised. These things don't make sense. So what I'm asking for, what I'm calling for, is a radical, not just another inquiry. We've had those. We had it into Nottingham, and these recommendations are given. Nothing changes, nothing happens. You're right, Nick, what you talk about when you say it's a complex thing and it costs a lot of money. But in order to save future generations and build a better society, to not have these same things going round and round and round in circles, it needs to be thought all about from the ground up. But what should happen to people? What should happen to people is they, as I said in the documentary, they should be held accountable. Today we got a £500,000 fine for the NHS. If there were kind of tangible consequences for people when they fail at their jobs, that they weren't completely protected in the guise of NDAs, because what we had in Nottingham, you've got to remember.
You talk about fines. Do you think people should go to prison?
I think potentially yes. I think if a surgeon is committing, well, we've got all the maternity inquiries at the moment, certainly in Nottingham, all over the country. If people fail to do their jobs in a way that I think is evidence-based, not emotional-based, but we also got to look at the fact that years ago when I was working with Ed Balls and we were trying to get, with that Labour government, we were trying to get more social workers involved. Now we have social workers training for less time. Got more social workers, but instead of training for the years that they used to train for, they're training for 2 years. We have the baby P situation. We've got the Victoria Climby situation. Young people are entering with the economical system at the moment. More and more young people should be going into care, but the threshold is so high now to get kids in care that they're out there being abused. Well, I'm sorry, you've probably got to wrap this up. But ultimately, in a positive way.
I don't want to, but
no, I hear you. In a positive way, I do believe that this government, if they want to, if the will is there, they've got a mandate. Change things from the ground up. Talk to young people, talk to people like myself who have been in the care system if they want to. They've got to want it.
Well, listen, Sam, Terry and Chris, thank you so much. And to all of our panel here this evening, a really powerful discussion at what feels like a point where there could be meaningful change. Thank you so much for your company this evening. That was the UK Tonight, our care special. You can watch Nick's full film about Nonita on our YouTube channel.